Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'll be your host for today. And for those who have been following along, it's been a pretty incredible week celebrating space exploration. We've had 30 plus speakers ranging from astronauts to engineers and scientists at NASA, JPL, Canadian Space Agency, private industry, and more, and even National Geographic Explorers. So it's been a ton of fun. But also we are on our final Space Week Hangout, but it's going to be a good one because we are being joined by Emily Calandrelli, and she was an MIT engineer turned science communicator. She hosts and produces Fox's Xploration Outer Space. And for those with Netflix, she's also a correspondent on Bill Nye Saves the World. She's also an author, and she'll probably talk a little bit about her new book series. So I'll let her touch on that a little bit. About space and communication. So one thing she really likes to do is inspire females to pursue careers in STEM, which I think is so very important. So Emily, it's incredible to have you joining us with our classrooms to wrap up Space Week.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Hi guys, we have a lot of students from all over, and I am so happy that you guys are here. We were actually in Alaska this year filming for my show. We're filming season 4 of Xploration Outer Space, and I was just in Alaska a few months ago filming with a university crew that wanted to launch a high altitude balloon into the Northern Lights to run science experiments in the aurora while it was happening. And so it was one of the coolest things that I've done for the show. So Alaska, very happy that you guys are here. So my name is Emily Calandrelli. I am a science communicator on many different platforms. So I'm a science TV show host with my show on Fox called Xploration Outer Space. I work with Bill Nye on his new show, Bill Nye Saves the World on Netflix. I have been a science journalist in the past, writing articles covering science news. And I am recently a children's book author. So I've been writing a children's book series about a little girl that loves robots and gadgets and uses the technology that she builds herself to solve mysteries and solve problems in her life. But I want to tell you a little bit about my show, Xploration Outer Space, because I'm the producer of the show. So as the producer, I get to decide where the host, me, gets to go all around the country. I get to go to really cool places, mostly NASA centers and private space companies and universities, sometimes schools like yours. I've visited really cool schools like you guys, because there are lots of students, really young students that are doing cool science that we want to highlight. I've gone to Alaska. I've gone to, I was in Canada recently. I went to Quebec to go to the Canadian Space Agency. If you are interested, there's an entire episode highlighting the achievements of Canada and the Canadian Space Agency on Hulu and on Yahoo right now. Teachers, if you want to show your students the show for free, it's on yahoo.com. Just search Xploration Outer Space Yahoo. All of the episodes are available for free, so if you guys want to look at that. And then more recently, I was in Hawaii a couple weeks ago filming on top of a volcano, highlighting the coolest observatories in the world. So I get to go to a lot of cool places. One of the stories I want to share with you is I got to go to Harry Potter World, which is not something you would think of typically when you're thinking of the coolest places that are related to space exploration. But I went to Harry Potter World recently with an astronaut. And we got to Harry Potter World before the park even opened. I remember getting there, it was pitch dark, the sun hadn't risen yet, and there was nobody there. We had the park to ourselves. And there was still the Harry Potter music playing, and I mean, I love space, but I love Harry Potter. So this was a dream come true for me. And we got to ride all the rides in Harry Potter World. And we did it because we were doing an episode on how riding a roller coaster and how riding theme park rides actually gives you a lot of the same gravitational forces on your body, G-forces, a lot of the same G-forces that you get when you're launching into space. So I would ride these rides with an astronaut, John McBride. I'm from West Virginia. He's the only astronaut from West Virginia. So it was also like a very personally exciting day for me. And so we would ride these rides, and astronaut John McBride would show me how the different roller coaster rides would feel the same as launching into space. So that was really, really fun. That was really cool. We rode roller coasters for literally 12 hours that day because some, TV show magic, you always have to do things multiple times so they can put cameras in multiple places. And so it was fun for maybe like the first 6 hours, but John McBride and I, after 6 hours, were like, oh my God, can we get off this ride? We were both feeling very sick because when you launch into space, you only do it once and then you get to be in space. We were riding roller coaster rides that gave you the same G-forces as going into space for 12 hours. So it was fun, but it was a lot. And then something I did last year was maybe my most favorite thing that I've ever done with the show. And I can see your classroom. So raise your hand if anybody here has heard of the Vomit Comet. You guys heard of the Vomit Comet? Okay, I see some hands. All right, so some of you. Now, the Vomit Comet, if you don't know, is the coolest thing that you will ever learn about. It is the coolest experience I have ever had in my entire life. And it's very similar to a roller coaster. And what it is it's a plane that flies like a roller coaster in the air like this. But instead of a regular roller coaster, this is a roller coaster that is flying at around 20,000 feet, and it's an 8,000 foot drop, like an 8,000 foot roller coaster. So it's really, really intense. And you do that because when you go over the hump like this, the people inside feel weightless. They start to free fall within the airplane. Because if you've ever been on a roller coaster, or if you've been driving in a car and you go over a hump and your butt lifts off your seat, or you get those like kind of butterfly feeling in your stomach because your stomach drops, it's like that, but for 30 seconds. So your butt lifts off your seat and you feel weightless for 30 seconds. And then when the plane goes under the hump, that's when you feel really heavy. That's when you feel about 1.8 times your weight. So the plane, you feel weightless, and then you feel really heavy, and then weightless and heavy, and weightless and heavy, and weightless and heavy, weightless and heavy for an hour and a half. So that is why they call it the Vomit Comet. Because if you had to ride that intense of a roller coaster for an hour and a half, you might vomit, right? So in the aircraft, to kind of prepare for people to do that, you wear these like very fancy flight suits. Everybody has to wear a flight suit. And in that flight suit, there's a pocket right here. And in that pocket is a very important tool that everybody needs to have. They check multiple times to make sure everybody has these in their pocket. And in that pocket is a barf bag, because that is one of the most important things that you will bring on this airplane. Because if you throw up and you're weightless, where does that throw up go? Everywhere, right? It doesn't just fall to the ground. It doesn't just plop, hit the ground and easy to clean up. No, it goes everywhere. It is floating. It is flying on the walls. It is hitting the ceiling, and some of it's hitting the floor. It is disgusting and very difficult to deal with. So if you feel sick, they make sure that you have a barf bag to put it in the bag, tie it off, and then hand it off to somebody that works there, because it can be a very messy thing to handle if you don't. Now, throw up works differently in weightlessness and what they call microgravity. It's basically very, very small gravity, microgravity. But everything works really differently in weightlessness, right? Water and food and everything. So if you've ever seen an astronaut eat in weightlessness, they can just squirt the water out of a bag. They can throw food in front of their faces and then go and chase it and fly into the food and eat it out of thin air. It is like a very, very odd phenomenon. But fire also works differently in microgravity and weightlessness. So if you've ever seen a flame on Earth, here, like it makes a kind of like a teardrop shape, right? It's just like a flame shape, I guess, but it goes up and down. But it makes that shape because we have gravity, because hot air, which is lighter than regular air, rises, but it only rises because we have gravity, which is why it's making this shape. The convection is making that shape. Now, if you've ever seen a flame in microgravity, What do you think that shape is? What do you think a fire looks like in microgravity, in weightlessness? When there's no gravity. I saw someone in the back there do this. It looks like a sphere. It looks like a circle. Exactly. Because when there's no gravity, the flames can move in all different directions. It can move like a ball. It looks very much like a ball of fire. And so imagine if you were trying to be a firefighter in space, in weightlessness. You'd have to train completely differently because everything works differently in microgravity. Now, raise your hand here if you play a sport. Who plays a sport here? All right, so raise your hand if you play football. Anyone play football? Does anybody do cheerleading? Or gymnastics? Or soccer? Anyone run? I was a runner. Does anyone do track or cross country? Awesome. Okay, that's what I did. Now, I want you to imagine your sport. Imagine the sport that you play in your head. And imagine playing that sport in space without gravity. Imagine being weightless playing that sport. How would it be different? What would you have to do to try to maintain the same rules of the sport? You'd probably have to put a net over the playing area, right? Or just you'd have to play inside a dome because things would fly away, not just the balls, players themselves would fly away. And if there were no air, right? If you were playing in the vacuum of space and everybody was wearing a spacesuit, you couldn't do curveballs. If anybody here plays soccer, when you kick the ball and you do kind of a curveball in soccer or baseball or softball and you do curveballs in baseball or softball, that curveball effect only works because of the air that we have in our atmosphere, because of the air that we breathe. So you couldn't do those tricks in weightlessness, microgravity, or not in weightlessness, but in the vacuum of space. And so everything would work differently. As a runner, you know, imagine running. Let's see if I can, like, as a runner, I do this, right? Watch my legs. Like every single time I take a step, gravity is bringing me back down, right? So I need gravity to run the way that normal people run. If I didn't have gravity with that first step, I would fly up and hit my head on the ceiling because there would be nothing to bring me back down, no force to bring me back down. And where that becomes a problem is because astronauts need to work out 2 hours a day, every single day in space. And so as a scientist and an engineer, you have to rethink the way that people will work out. How do you use exercise equipment in space? Because if you had a weight, you just had weights, that's not gonna do anything in weightlessness. Those weights aren't going to weigh anything. So you're not gonna build any muscle by lifting weights. If you wanna use a treadmill in space, you're going to fly up and hit your head on the ceiling. So you have to redesign the treadmill. And they have, right? The treadmill that they use in space now, they make the astronauts wear, it's kind of like a special type of backpack where they put bungee cords on their shoulders. It's kind of like big rubber bands where it's on your shoulder and it's to the ground. And so every time they go up, the bungee cord stretches, the rubber band stretches. And what happens when you stretch a rubber band and then let it go? It wants to come back together, right? It wants to go back to its normal shape. It wants to go back to its original smaller shape, right? So that's exactly what happens with this treadmill, is you go up and it stretches the rubber bands and then it brings them back down. You're creating fake gravity or artificial gravity by using this mechanical device to bring the person back down rather than relying on gravity. So it's really cool. So we flew in the Vomit Comet for fun. If you ever want to watch our episode, Teachers, there's a really fun episode of me going up with a professional dancer in the Vomit Comet and trying to do professional dance moves in microgravity. It does not go well. It is very difficult to dance in microgravity, and we look incredibly awkward. And so it's a great episode to watch to show the effects of how difficult it is to operate normally under microgravity conditions. So we were there basically just having fun. We had a really, really good time, but scientists use the Vomit Comet for science. to test how these different things operate, how fire operates differently, how water operates differently, how exercise equipment operates differently, and weightlessness. So this vomit comet that we wrote is one of the coolest tools that scientists have to test what life is like in space. And as an engineer, as a student, as a college student, I think I was maybe 21 when I rode the Vomit Comet for the first time. So students here, if you're interested in going into science and engineering, the Vomit Comet was why I chose to go into aerospace engineering. I'm not kidding you. I remember going into college, I wanted to do engineering because I liked math, but I didn't know what kind of engineering I wanted to do. And I remember walking through the hallways of engineering and seeing a poster on the wall that was somebody floating weightless. And it said, "Do your homework weightless." And I was like, what? What does that even mean? Are they sending students into space? This like can't be real. This is so crazy. But it turned out this Vomit Comet thing was a class that you could take for credit as an aerospace engineer. And so that's why I went into aerospace engineering. Because not only could I do this Vomit Comet thing and fly and have this cool like human experience, but it was completely free. It was free to me. And all I had to do was think of an experiment that I wanted to do, that myself and my team members wanted to do in the Vomit Comet, to be able to ride it for free. So if you want to go into science and engineering, there's some really cool things that you can do as long as you have a cool imagination and want to test an idea of what, different things would, how different things would react under microgravity and weightlessness and things like that. So yeah, so that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. Now, more recently, I have been working with a guy named Bill Nye. Raise your hand if you guys have heard of Bill Nye. You guys watch Bill Nye videos, maybe? Cool. Okay, so Bill Nye was my hero growing up. I absolutely loved his science videos in class. It was one of the more fun days of science class because we got to watch a video, and not just a video, but a Bill Nye video. They were pretty cool. And so today I get to work with my childhood hero on his new show, Bill Nye Saves the World. And I'm a field correspondent for him. So as a field correspondent, Bill sends me out into the field. I get to go all around the world to cover really cool science stories for him. Last year, he sent me all the way to India to cover stories on vaccinations. I don't know if you know this, but India recently eradicated polio from their country. Really cool success story because India is so large. There's so many people there, and it was really hard to get rid of this terrible disease that was making lots and lots of people sick, and some people were dying, and it was really scary for them. And they found a way to get rid of it using vaccinations. And it was a really cool science story, a really cool success story for India. I also got to go there to cover a story about space. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. This is one of the coolest things that's happening in the space industry today. It's called the Google Lunar XPrize. Raise your hand if you've heard of this. Has anyone heard of the Google Lunar XPrize? A couple of you. Okay. So the Google Lunar XPrize is an international competition to see which private company can land on the moon first. So there are companies all around the world that are building rovers and robots to try to send them to the moon and go to the moon, and they have to rove across the surface and take pictures and send pictures back to the Earth. And the first person to do that is going to win $10 million. It's one of the coolest space races that's happening in the world right now. And one of the leading teams is from the United States. Moon Express is one of the top teams in the competition. Another top team is a team from India called Team Indus. And it's a really young team in India. The average age of the employee that works there is 27. So the people that work there are mostly in their 20s. They're really young. And India has never landed on the moon before. So if this little company, this company of young engineers will land on the moon, they will not only win this international prize for India, but they will be the first entity from India to land on the moon. It will be really cool. So all of this is happening. They think that somebody is going to land on the moon, hopefully sometime in the next year. So when that happens, it's going to be big news, people. It's going to be big news. And I'm really, really excited because I got to go all the way to India and meet this team. And we have a US team in the competition. It's going to be very, very exciting. Now, more recently, I have become a book author. So I've done science and engineering and science communication on TV, and more recently wrote a book called The Elise Adventures. So there are 5 books in the series. These are the first 2. You can see them. And it's all about this girl, Ada. So Ada Lace is a 3rd grader who loves building robots and gadgets, and she builds spy gadgets, and she likes to solve problems and mysteries with the technologies that she creates. She's a girl from West Virginia, and she moves to San Francisco. I'm a girl from West Virginia, and I moved to San Francisco. I may or may not have tried to have the illustrator make Ada look like me when I was a kid. So this is basically the child that I wished that I was when I was her age. Ada is very talented and very smart and really, really good at building things because she's not afraid to try it out. She's not afraid to experiment. And I wish I was more like Ada when I was her age. So she's a really cool kid. The first book is all about solving the case of a missing dog. When she gets to San Francisco, she tries to bungee jump off a tree, and she doesn't calculate how long the bungee should be just right, and she breaks her leg. And so she has this cast on her leg. She's in this new apartment in San Francisco. She doesn't know anybody. She's in her bedroom watching the world go by outside her bedroom window. And outside of her bedroom window one day, she notices that her neighbor's dog goes missing. And so she and her neighbor friend, Nina, who is really quirky and smart in a creative way. Nina's really like artistic and smart that way. Ada's really smart analytically and scientifically. They work together and use their superpowers combined to try to solve the case of the missing dog. So yeah, it's a really fun book series. I wanted to create it because when I was little, there weren't a lot of science books that had lead characters that were girls. There were a lot of really cool science fiction books and adventure books, but a lot of them had male characters that were the lead. And sometimes you want to read a book that has somebody that kind of sounds and looks like you in it, right? So I want to create a book that had that for little girls that might sound or look like me. But yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. I am happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. I saw somebody on Instagram tagged me, one of the classrooms. You guys were writing up different Lit grade 6. You guys had already had some questions written up on the board. I see you guys. So yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, I'm happy to open the floor to questions.
All right. Well, Emily, thanks so much. It's always great to hear about what you're up to. And yeah, I'm so excited that your first couple books are out now. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, let's meet our first classroom. So we have Mrs. Forrest's class. They're grade 6s in Edmonton, Alberta in Canada. Let me turn your microphone on. You guys can go ahead with the question.
Okay, so who's our first question? Stand up. Speak loud.
Hi, my name is Laura, and my question is, why is it important to you that more women are involved in STEM careers?
Yeah, why is it important? That's a valid question. That's a good question. Right now, there's not a lot of girls in engineering. When I was in engineering in college, out of a 50-person class, 50, there maybe would be 2 girls in the class. And so sometimes it's not super fun to feel like you're in a boys' club, and engineering is really fun. And I would hate it for little girls to not want to go into engineering and fly on things like the Vomit Comet because they feel like they're in a boys' club. And so I think more girls would want to join if they knew how cool it was, if they knew how awesome it was. And just imagine all of the problems that the world has today. Things like climate change and wanting to get to Mars and solving pollution and all of these big problems that we have today. Right now, we're sort of excluding 50% of the world's population from trying to solve that problem. We need all hands on deck here, people. We need both girls and guys putting their minds to the problem. We need the best minds on the case. And right now, it's mostly only half of the population that are going into these fields and trying to solve these problems. So we're leaving out all of these people over here that could have all of these wonderful ideas that may not want to go into it because it feels like a boys' club. So we're trying to get more girls into science and engineering because we need them, because we need you guys to help solve all of these big problems that we have. Because you guys have a lot of really good ideas, and they may be different ideas than what all the people over here have.
All right, that's a great question and an awesome answer. Let's swing to our next class. Let's go to another class in Edmonton. They're grade 6s as well, and they're joining us from Brookside School. And I think they're the class you might have saw the Instagram post from. They were waiting like crazy when you mentioned it. How you guys doing over there? I don't think your microphone's working. So if your teacher wants to try and see if she can unmute it, or if that doesn't work, you can either email me a question or two, or there's a blue chat sidebar on the left of your screen, and you can type me questions right there. I'll get them right away. So I'm going to swing back to you guys in a moment.
What did you want to do when you were in grade 6? They're from Bannerman School. Oh. Is it working?
Yeah, that's the class. Their microphone's just not working.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so what did I want to do when I was in grade 6? Wow, okay, so grade 6, I was in middle school. You know, I think that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be an astronaut when I was little. I didn't know anything about engineering. I knew that I liked art and I liked math. And because I really loved art and math, I wanted to become an architect. So I think when I was in grade 6, I probably thought that I was either going to become an artist or an architect, which is somebody that kind of designs buildings and designs like different apartment buildings and homes and things like that. And I thought that that's what I wanted to do. And then I just found some really cool opportunities as somebody that wanted to pursue aerospace engineering. For me, I went into aerospace engineering because as a student, you got to do some really, really cool stuff like floating in the Vomit Comet or building robots or going to different internships at NASA, traveling. I love to travel. And so when I was going into engineering, I found that there were a lot of cool internships around the country and around the world where they would pay me to go and do these internships if I studied engineering. So I did internships in California, in Ohio, and in DC, in China, and all of these internships were paid because I wanted to do engineering. So yeah, I think that it's okay that if you're in 6th grade and you don't know what you want to do, I think that's totally fine. I would recommend trying to talk to a little bit older than you and asking for their advice. Too often, I think we talk to people that are maybe 20 years older than us, and we can't really relate to them, and it's hard to understand why they do what they do. So talk to students. Teachers, bring some college students into your classroom and have them talk about why they chose their major, and that could be maybe really helpful for somebody who's just in 6th grade. Oh, and my handle, somebody asked me, what's my Twitter handle? So my Twitter handle, Instagram, Facebook, I'm all at The Space Gal. THE, the word space, gal. The Space Gal.
All right, let's jump to our group joining us in Anchorage, Alaska. So I think your teacher said there was about 4 classrooms. Looks like you guys are in the gym. Let me turn your microphone on.
All right, I'll start with Sheila. Go ahead, stand up. There you go.
Hi, I'm Shaylin, and what was your favorite hobby when you were younger?
What was my favorite hobby when I was younger? So let's see. I mean, I love sports. I always played sports. I played basketball for, ever since I was 6 years old, I played basketball. I loved running, cross country, and track. I was a majorette, so I was a baton twirler. I really loved doing majorette stuff. I was in the band. When I was at home, though, I guess hobbies that I did, this is kind of embarrassing. When we had snow days, my mom would be a producer, and she would create home videos where I would act in it and my little brother would act in it. And so we have all of these home videos of, we called it the Emily and Drew show. And sometimes I would be the princess and he would be the prince, and we would go off and have adventures, and sometimes my dog would be in it. So I really love doing that. So I like to act when I was at home by myself with my family. But when I was at school, I loved doing sports and band and running and all of that.
All right, and let's visit our fourth classroom joining us live. Is Holly's group. They are, oops, my screen went down. Let's turn that back on. They are joining us from Farmington, and we found out Missouri, and they're, I believe, graders. So your microphone is on.
Go so close. Okay. Hi, I'm Faith, and I was wondering what made you so passionate about space, and what keeps you so passionate about space?
What keeps me so passionate about space? That's a really good question, because I think for a lot of people, we think that, or a lot of grown-ups especially, think that space has been canceled, because when the space shuttle ended, they just assumed that we weren't going to space anymore and that NASA was canceled and we weren't doing anything. But in my opinion, I think space is more exciting today than it has ever been in history, including the Apollo era, because now space exploration is cheaper and more accessible, which means that more people can do it. And so now that we have more companies, more individuals exploring space, they're doing it each individually in a unique way and creating all of these new ideas that we couldn't have if only NASA was exploring space. For example, we have companies like Bigelow Aerospace creating space hotels. We have companies like Planetary Resources going off to mine asteroids and trying to create gas stations in space. We have people that are building airplanes that want to send Justin Bieber into space and have Justin Bieber become an astronaut. Virgin Galactic has created a space plane that will hopefully start flying in the next couple years, but people can just buy a ticket into space. It's not a cheap ticket. It is a ticket that is at the low price of $250,000, but people like Justin Bieber and Katy Perry and Ashton Kutcher and Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, all of these people have purchased tickets on this plane, and once they start flying, they will become astronauts. Like, we will live in a world where Justin Bieber is an astronaut. And I don't really know what to think about that, but I think it's a really cool thing. I think that means we're moving in the right direction in terms of space exploration. And we have things like the Google Lunar XPrize. I mean, there are so many different things that are happening right now that it's hard to stay up with most of it. I haven't even mentioned reusable rockets. Like, have you guys watched a SpaceX launch and watched like the rocket go into space and then part of that rocket come back down and land on a floating drone ship in the ocean? Like, people are transforming the way that space exploration works today. And so for me, it's incredibly exciting. It's incredibly fast paced. There are so many different things going on. That's what keeps me interested in space, because it's constantly changing and constantly like being very exciting.
And that's such a good point, Emily. Right now, there are so many future opportunities coming up in space exploration,
Yes.
especially private industries jumping into it. It's not going to be such an exclusive club anymore in the next few years.
Exactly. Like, speaking of jobs, I mean, there are so many different types of cool jobs in the space industry now, because, you know, when maybe I was even younger, the main job that people would have would be to go and work at NASA. And NASA is cool. That was a really cool opportunity and still is a really cool opportunity today. But now you don't just have NASA, you have SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic and Virgin Orbit and Bigelow Aerospace and all of these different types of companies that are just doing incredible things and changing the way that, you know, humans will interact with our universe, which is ridiculous and profound and awesome, and you can be a part of it.
All right. Emily, how's your time? Do you have time for another couple questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
There was a question came online from YouTube, and they're wondering how long it takes you to write each book.
That's a great question. How long does it take to write each book? So, like most things that are good, I work with a team of talented people. So I work with a writer, Tamsin Weston, who's a professional children's book author. and I work with Renee Carilla. She is the illustrator of this book. And it takes, I would say, back and forth, thinking of ideas and thinking of the science and fact-checking the science. We really wanted to make sure that everything in the book is fact-checked and accurate. It's real science here. It's not science fiction. It's stuff real today. All in all, it probably takes about 3 months to create a book end to end. So they've been fun to create. They're, it's a really fun way to combine my interest in creativity and in science. I think a lot of people, especially women, have interest in both realms where you're not just interested in science, but you have other things that you care about as well. And it's a cool way to combine the two interests and create a product that, I can like hold and show people, and it's really cool.
Okay, well, boys and girls, if you do have another question in your classroom, come up and wave at the camera, and that'll be my cue. Oh, that was quick. So we're going back to language. Go ahead, your microphone's on.
Is the universe completely unlimited or infinite?
Is the universe completely unlimited or infinite? Wow, that is a profound question. The universe is mind-bogglingly big, and I think one way to think of it is that it's not completely infinite. There is an edge, but we haven't explored the entire universe. We know that it's out there, but for example, planets, like how in our solar system, we have all the planets in our solar system, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, how we have those? Well, 20 years ago, like before you were born, astronomers didn't know if there were any other planets in the universe. They couldn't see them. We didn't know. Our cameras weren't good enough. But recently, we've put really, really good cameras in space that have found other planets in the universe. And now we think there are billions of them. We think there are so many of them. But we didn't know that more than 20 years ago. We didn't know that before you were born. And so today, not only are our astronomers finding new planets in our universe all the time, but we're finding planets that are like the Earth. We're finding Earth-like planets, which is exciting because if we think we can find Earth-like planets, then maybe, just maybe, that means that there's other life in the universe. Because Earth is really special because it supports life like humans. It supports life like you. It gives you the water that you need to drink and the air that you need to breathe, and it keeps you at a good temperature to keep you alive. So we think that other planets like the Earth might have life on it too. But we didn't even know that they existed before recently. So there's so much exploration to be done. We need many more scientists and astronomers like maybe you to go and do this discovery, to be an explorer, to find these new planets and search for life on other worlds. Because the universe is huge, it feels infinite because there's just so much to explore.
All right, awesome. So just want to say a quick bye to our class in Anchorage. They're going to lunch, so thanks for hanging out, boys and girls. Anybody else want to wave at the camera? Oh, there we go. We are going back to Edmonton. Here we go. Your microphone's on.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I was wondering, what personal accomplishment are you most proud of and why?
What accomplishment am I most proud of and why? I think for me, so I'm a West Virginia girl. I came from a relatively small town, and going to MIT, the school MIT, was a very, very scary thing for me to do. I was very nervous. I didn't know anybody else that was going. I went there knowing that it's one of the best schools in the world, and there's a lot of smart people that go there. And I had to convince myself that maybe I was a smart person too, and I could do it. I could graduate from there. And so graduating from MIT was the best accomplishment I think that I'm the most proud of, because I wasn't sure if I could do it. Have you ever tried out for a team or even sports? Sometimes you're really nervous to try out for something and you make it and you make the team and you weren't even sure if you were good enough to make it. That's how that felt, going to MIT and graduating from MIT. I was really nervous because I wasn't sure if I belonged there. There were a bunch of smart kids that had parents who were scientists and engineers. I didn't come from a family of scientists or engineers. I didn't even know any engineers in my family. A lot of people in my family didn't go to college. Some people in my extended family didn't even finish high school. And so going to a place like MIT was very nerve-wracking. And being able to graduate from there was a big accomplishment for me. So I think that's the thing I'm most proud of.
All right, we've got a question that was typed in from our class in Edmonton, grade 6s at Bannerman. And they're wondering, if you took a bucket of water the size of Jupiter and dumped it on the sun, would it evaporate?
So that's a great question. I would have to think about that. I would imagine if you had a small bucket of water and you threw it into space, whether or not it's close to the sun, water will boil off in the vacuum of space. There's no air in space, it's a complete vacuum. So any water that you put in space will just boil off and boil away. And I'm curious what the phenomenon would look like as you put more and more water into that bucket. Because I imagine that it would continue to boil off, at least on the outer edge. And the heat of the sun would certainly make that boil off faster. But I would like to see that experiment done. I'm not exactly sure how that would look, but that's a fun question to think about.
Yes, it's always fun to see, you know, what students are thinking about. And that would be a big bucket of water, but the sun is pretty darn big too. So.
Yeah, the sun is pretty huge and much, much larger than Jupiter. So I would imagine it would completely boil off, but how quickly is maybe a good question there. How quickly would it completely boil away?
All right, in grade 8s in Missouri, do you guys have a final question?
Maybe. Well, here. Oh, okay. Would you buy a ticket to go to space?
Where do you buy the ticket?
Yep.
You'd have to go to Virgin Galactic, my friend. They're the ones that hold the tickets. But I think the biggest thing you have to do first is save up $250,000. That's the hardest part. Finding the place to buy the ticket is the easy part. Saving the money is the hard part.
Well, maybe with a show like Xploration Outer Space, you'll get a discount or something.
Oh, that's the dream. That's the dream.
All right. Well, Emily, thank you so much. It's been great to hear you share some of your stories and some of your experiences. And I think that, you know, the message of there's so much more to explore and discover, and more women in science and STEM, it's just so great. And it's great to hear you talk to the students and share some really good advice with them. So I appreciate that. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All
right.
Bye. So I'm just going to turn the classroom mics on and let them say goodbye and thank you. All right, Emily, thank you so much. Thanks for wrapping up our Space Week. And you guys, everyone, enjoy your weekend.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, guys.